I put that together. I thought it might work. How you doing, Carl?
Well, after that intro, well, thank you guys. It was a good show. I think me and Ryan made some good points. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah. Oh,
Now, how do we come up with this topic, by the way?
we just kind of shoot the shit amongst each other, and then it kind of comes up. And the wordsmithing there was me trying to be pedantic about it. Like, are you? I guess I didn't even put it on the title of this thing, so it was like, are you fat in the belly or fat in the soul? I think it was. How did I word it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
simply a
something like that.
disagreement. Like, I think the original idea you had was something like how to avoid your girl becoming fat or a bitch,
Oh yeah, and then which
or
was
and a bitch.
worse?
And then I was like, well, if I had to pick, like, let me throw a qualifier in here. There's like America, well, North America fat, and then there's the rest of the world fat. Those are not the same thing.
That's funny. Yeah, that's true. The Americans, what's it? That big front gut thing they got? I don't understand it. Or what's that? Muffin top, right?
Yeah.
What's the word for muffin top where it's on a girl's triceps? Like, there's got to be a name for that. It's way too
Oh,
common.
bingo wings.
Bingo wings.
Bingo wings.
What are you guys up to this morning? Oh, I'm just having a coffee and we're talking about tricep fat. Oh, that's cool.
Oh, well, my whole thing, like, if you had to pick, I'd go with her becoming rest of the world fat, like the just got engaged 15,
Yeah.
over her going psycho.
Well, speaking of like American fat versus the rest of the world fat, there's a difference between battle axe wife and stabs you with a knife wife. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you had to pick, like, I'd rather have a chunky girl with a little bit more, with, uh, let's say, a good attitude over, like, a girl who's in top shape but is a total drag to deal with.
So that's the question. And I'm trying to think of like who's a chubby, a more portly personality that people might know from Twitter. I can think of the alternative there, like having that Deads and Sushi girl, and that's the one you're dating because she's a ball buster, at least on Twitter. But
But
the
it's
point
more
I was
about,
kind
like,
of, oh,
I don't
sorry,
know.
go. I'm
Well, I just
rambling.
don't like when, I just think pain in the ass is actually the worst thing a girl can be.
Mm-hmm.
Just because she wears out her welcome very fast like that.
I suppose I want to go with
You're
it.
the
That's the
kind of
problem.
girl
Is I'm
she,
so ornery myself that I think I enjoy it more than I should. But I think that's a personal failing on my part, not so much like a great woman thing.
well, it's for me. It's more about the whole idea of being nagged constantly, or her being hyperactive, so you're never left alone, being really needy. There are a lot of negative personality traits that can make a girl a pain in the ass to deal with.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. The point I was taking it with though is so for a lot of guys who get in a relationship, the girl they end up in a long-term relationship with isn't the same girl that they started dating. And weight gain tends to be one of the most common ones. It's like
Oh
metabolisms
yeah.
get slower if you've been with a girl, they tend to gain a little bit of weight. Sometimes they just get lazy. Sometimes the guy is so comfortable that they don't even feel the need to keep up appearances. And I was thinking strategies on that because it comes up. It's one of the next to she cheated on me. I think she cheated on me. What do I do? That's like the second most common field report that you tend to see is how do I get her to drop from 2 bills to something like one and third? Or how many stone is that? I don't know. I'm not good at British measurements. How many stones? 130 pounds. Anybody know in the chat?
Hmm.
And we
Not good
kind of
with
had a
math on him, but stones? Like, who
yeah.
the fuck uses stones, man?
The Brits, man. Same queen, same
Oh,
queen.
fuck the Brits. Fuck the Brits.
You're sounding like a Frenchman now.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like, how do you kind of keep her trying?
Yeah.
And
And
I
instead
mean,
of
that's kind of where like people tend to go on with dread game.
mm-hmm.
But dread game kind of depends on her actually seeing you as some kind of prize. And if she's already putting on the weight or acting out, then she's not really seeing you as a prize anymore.
But that's why Dread Game's never been
Could be
about
that.
winning the girl back. It's always about it's a branch swing, technically, a protracted branch swing.
But you could say that if you're already at that point, if it's really early, it could also be a test from her, seeing like how much is he going to let me get away with before he says something.
Oh, like the haircut test. When the girl comes home one day with like a bob to see what you'll do to it.
Oh, that's never been a problem with it. I just tell the girls if your hair is shorter than like your shoulders, I'm no longer dating you.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's easy when you're dating, but like I said, every part of
Once
a
you're married,
relationship
it's
is more
quite different.
investment from a guy, right? Like have a girl move in. That's an investment. Having her move out isn't as simple as just stop answering your phone or throwing a marriage at her or popping a couple kids out. There's always that extra level of investment. And I think each step of the way, there has to be like I don't want to say negotiation, but I can't think of a better word, like a renegotiation of the norms. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I will say though, with the yeah, man, I think that's actually a good topic to deal with because kind of if you put two kids in her,
Mm-hmm.
then you can't really blame her for wrecking her body because technically you were there helping.
Dude, I had a tweet. I hated that where girls like baby gravies and then turn around and start saying how like her kids wrecked her body and stuff like that. I find it such like peak cringe. But here's the thing. I often think it's not so much about like if you don't look like a supermodel, I'm out of here, but effort. You know what I mean? Like you were saying right early in the thing, investment. So you don't expect a girl has to be 105 pounds every day for the rest of your life with the tightest body ever. But there's a difference between, I don't know, picking a random weight here, 140 pounds and out running every day or working
240
out versus
pounds.
140 pounds and just lying on the sofa watching Maury Povich.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. It's about the investment, and you can say that that should kind of be a concept. And ideally, the effort should go up the longer you're together, and then
Yeah.
you just have to account for kind of like you will have times, I guess, where like I've never had kids, thank God, but uh, let's say you have kids, you may have to accept that a lot of the effort is going towards them for the first couple of years at least.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty useless. They kind of can't even cook for themselves. No knife skills. It is what it is. They don't pay rent.
Yeah,
Man, they're
exactly.
useless.
Don't even pay their own power.
Constantly crying. Yeah, I mean, but
So
that's
for me, that would kind of be like the main concern. There would be like is the effort being kept at an acceptable level, and what do you consider an acceptable level?
the thing too. I mean, you could obviously there's like that Bill of Assertive Rights, Manuel Smith, when I know I feel guilty stuff, where acceptable to you may not be acceptable to her, but if you're willing to pay the consequences for whatever boundaries you set, then whatever. So if you're the guy that expects a girl to be perfect all the time, she's never going to meet it. And if you're happy losing her over that, then that's fine. I think a lot of guys
Well, it
though, they
reminds
look
me like I
for like an objective. Well, what's the check on the chart? What X ratio here, Y ratio there? Okay, well, she's allowed to gain five. Like, no, people miss that personal standard part of it. It's like your own personal standards. Maybe they're unreasonable and maybe they're not, but they're kind of
is my mic
nobody
really
else's
that low?
business. Is which?
No,
It's
but I
kind
keep
of
saying I'm
low,
getting
but
complaints that my mic volume is down. So see if I can turn the gain up.
yeah, it's a little low, but it's not bad. Whatever. People are going to complain about
Okay, let's
anything.
see
Your
if I
voice
can
is
get it
too
better.
modulated. I miss the
Okay,
modulator. Not enough bass. Too
how is
much
it now?
bass. It's good.
Is that better?
Yeah. Let me see. Guys in the chat, let us know. Thank you, by the way, Mark Antoine Balthazar, the $1 super chat, Canadian. Nothing in there with
That's like
words,
what?
so. Oh, I guess that's his way of
Nice,
saying your voice is
nice,
good.
yeah, nice profile picture, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but I think the investment thing and the I don't get why my volume is so bloody low.
I don't know. Oh, half the volume. Why don't I just turn mine down then? I guess I can't really turn down. There. Now I'll just have mine low. You guys can turn up your volume. Move the mic a little ways away. I've been doing the audiobook recording, and so I have like a better setup where it keeps the mic a consistent distance, and I can do all my audio recording there. I have like that soundproofing foam all over the place. So far, so
Okay,
good.
we'll
That's a
see how
ton of
this
work.
see how it works now if I get any because it says according to my equalizer it should be on good mic volume now. So
All right.
I'm not
Oh,
sure how I can get it any louder because all the sound settings are maxed.
that's fine. We'll just have to listen closely every time you say something cool. Yeah, investment. Like this one comes up all the time too. Guys doing field reports with their wives, and like obviously there's the workout thing. They want the girl to work out better. At the end of the day, you just want to find out that the girl is at least invested, if not more invested. And that's like a Briffault's law, like where the or not even Briffault's law. What's the? I don't even know who to attribute to. Who's the one that said relationships or men are the gatekeepers to commitment and girls are the gatekeepers to sex? Was that Roosh?
I have no idea who said that first, man. But it may be a Hartis. That was like something Hartis would say.
Yeah, that sounds like him. But that's the point. Like, if guys are the gatekeepers of commitment, girls are the gatekeepers of sex, if you're giving it away for lower and lower standards, like I can see where the anger comes from. It's not because you're angry at a girl for not investing. It's you're angry at yourself for not putting up with it. But that's typical ego guys raised as defective girls thing. We can't blame ourselves, so we have to project that blame onto her, which is usually how that resentment cycle builds. And I'm just surprised. Like, add some selfishness into your life. Like you said, set those standards, best efforts. Like, that's all you want is investment and effort. And then the rest of it will be fine. Like, we're guys. We'll learn how to have sex with anything. Guys will sleep with a girl behind a
By the way, have I
dumpster.
told you how much I hate the new Reddit? Sorry for interrupting it.
Oh, dude, it's absolute trash. I have to go to the old one. You just do old.reddit.com and it'll make it look like the
Oh
old
yeah, I
system
know.
again.
I keep using that one.
Oh, man.
I'm trying to
So,
find my sound settings.
So off topic, I did a Reddit post. I haven't done one in forever. I called it Flotsam and a Sea of Tism because there was a lot of content creators that are getting really frustrated because every time they post anything, it's just a bunch of Aspergers in the comments. And so I brought up how old Royce stuff. Royce didn't write for an audience. He wrote for himself. In fact, he kind of hated his audience, but he needed them around because otherwise nobody would read his stuff. And so I put in here, like I just made up the points that most people, when you create anything of worth, are just going to bring their baggage in there and shit it all up. So you can't do it for the audience. It's a covert contract, and it's full of tism now. Like, holy crap! I'm absolutely amazed how, like,
Speaking of Tism, how did your MGTOW episode end up?
oh, I don't even. Actually, it did better. I didn't expect it. So it's on Twitch earlier. I was talking about how I really don't like the dunking on incels and black pill things. They just shit up the comments. They're a complete waste of time. And then we got in there. We did like a little backroom talk, and Rich and John were like, "All right, let's try something different here. Instead of just berating them, let's like talk about our hard times a little bit. Let them know it's like, dude, everybody has a hard time. It's okay. Buck up. A little more of a positive message." So we went that route, and I think it went well. Like, they felt listened to, so we didn't get any tism in the chats, but it was really surprising. I didn't expect it to go nearly that well. Having said that, that guy's still trying to dox John's mom, so who cares, right?
Oh, maybe she needs to get laid. Who knows?
Yeah, but it was nice.
Wouldn't that be amazing though? If wouldn't that be like the best story of the space ever? If like the one guy who left like the incel community, he did it because he hooked up with John's mom.
I don't know how to come back from that burn. Like, you can't win an argument with that guy ever again. You bring up something about sex dolls, he's like, yeah, but I slept with your mom, and that's it. End of conversation. Nice for Chachi Robe. Do you know I slept with your mom? Guy.
No, I remember it's like you had this thing back in the day where like I had a friend of mine who slept with another friend's sister, and they kind of got over that.
Mm-hmm.
But what he didn't get over was the fact that the other guy would bring it up.
Well, yeah, because it's like a flex, but it's like a hardcore flex. I'm sure there's some evolutionary reason that somebody doing your mom is like some kind of dominance play, but I'm not smart enough to find that. We need like Jeff Miller on here to explain that. And I'm pretty sure he'd love to waste his time on that question.
Oh, it would be like an interesting topic to talk about at some point. Like all these like call it kindergarten flexing or something, and just kind of work through like the evolutionary psychology reasoning for all like the kind of kindergarten flexing.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be bad. We got tons of examples on Twitter of it too. Everybody with a coach or day game after his name should pretty much fit that bill.
Because like my thinking has always been like people don't really like the dynamic. If you abstract it far enough,
Mm-hmm.
the dynamics are the same from about the time we can walk and talk. It's just that they become more advanced
Sophisticated
as
or
they age.
refined.
Yeah, sophisticated is the right word, because if you look at girls, for instance, when they're how they interact as a group when they're 8,
Mm-hmm.
it's slightly different from how they do it when they're 12 and through their Mean Girls period, and then in college, and then when they're adults. But it's the same kind of behaviors with like the same desired outcomes. They're just more, like you said, sophisticated or refined. Same thing with men. Like when we're like 8 to 14, basically we tend to fight a lot physically,
Yeah.
and then it moves into like the more like the flex and dunking on theory, and that's kind of where we remain for the rest of our lives, except when we're really fucking drunk. Then we start fighting again.
Never done that one. I go strictly for the juggler verbally. But I see what you mean. A lot of guys do that. They get all tussly. Actually, a buddy did that in Vegas. Like he knows I never like fighting. He got drunk in Vegas and he decided how fun it would be. I watched 2 UFCs. I'm going to put him in a rear naked choke. But he doesn't know I used to train MMA too. And so anybody in the chat who does MMA, you're going to laugh at this story. So he goes to put me in a rear naked. I'm trying to hold my gin and tonic up without getting it. And then he crosses his legs around my waist, which I thought was hilarious because if you don't know, when the guy crosses his legs like that, he actually puts it in a perfect position where you take your foot and you push down on his ankle and you actually put him in an ankle lock. It's like a no-handed ankle lock. It's the most funniest thing ever watching a guy tap out after he's got your back like that. I think I might have sprained his ankle though because he couldn't walk the rest of the trip, but didn't spill my gin and tonic. I don't know why I'm telling that story. It just made me laugh.
Well, that's a flex in itself. Like I broke this guy's ankle without spilling a gin and tonic.
Then the big question is, why are you drinking gin and tonics? Isn't that liquid panty remover? I'm like, yes, I want to remove panties.
Well, that's the worst thing. Like gin and tonic used to be like a go-to drink when you go out because you want something simple, and you
Yeah,
also want something that when you, especially if you're doing game, you want it to be something that you can switch out, and people will just assume you're still drinking gin and tonic, but you're just drinking tonic or just drinking soda water or whatever.
yeah, exactly. Plus, at the bar, if you had black lights, the tonic water would glow in the dark.
So I kind of like gin and tonics for that, but then I started actually enjoying gin and tonics because I used to order it so much.
Then I gained an alcohol problem. Uh, I guess I'll switch this back. I don't have
Oh,
a
that was
segue for
actually a
the.
funny thing though. Like
Oh, what's that?
funny like tangent to that. How many guys who were in the pickup scene back in like the early 2000s who ended up either with a drug problem, a drinking problem, a pregnancy problem, or all three?
I would rather have that than I've only got 8 notches in 10 years problem. You know what I mean? Not mentioning anybody in specific here.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just don't get how you can do it for 10 years and not be any good at it. Back to investment though. So investment with girls, a lot of
Oh,
guys
dude,
have this problem.
that's easy to explain, man. I mean, I've seen your Mega Man streams. You've been playing Mega Man for what 30 years, and you're still not any good at it.
Dude, I beat it last night. It was awesome. The greatest thing, my childhood dream was to finally beat that stupid game, and I did it now. It's like a 39-year-old man just crushed it. Crushed it. Now we're gonna go through the whole series. Also, thanks for subscribing to
Okay.
the series.
To loop back on the topic, though, it's kind of like Chris Rock had a good bit where he's like, when you meet a person, when you meet a person for a date, you don't meet them. You meet their representative.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to get
And
scientific about it, you can call it a mask.
Yeah, but over time, you will see less and less of that representative, and you'll see more and more of the real person.
Which is weird.
And you also have to keep in mind that, like, with people, when you combine two individuals into a couple, that creates its own dynamic
Mm-hmm.
that will most likely fuck up yours and her routines. And there are also some things you decide that this is okay. Like, I've been having fun watching, like, all these couples pranks.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you wonder, why aren't these fuckers divorced? And you're like, oh yeah, they got divorced in 2018. Because
Yeah, that was.
well, you can kind of tell when like a dynamic like joking with each other or pranking goes from being okay, we're both having fun doing this to okay, this is starting to become slightly malicious.
That little slight dynamic. So it's funny you talk about the representative of that. I was thinking about this. Like your boss at work, you can work for him for 20 years and you still keep up that facade. You can go home, bitch out your husband because you had a horrible day at work, bitch out your kids, blame them for ruining your body. But then the UPS guy comes to the door and you start acting polite again. And most people would say, well, you just be polite. It's a stranger. That's how you treat them. And it's like a perfect stranger you can put on your mask for because that's the polite thing to do. But you refuse to do it for your family at home because, they deserve the real you. And I'm just like, that's not a compliment for some people. I was thinking about it. A lot of it isn't. So it's not that people generally are lazy, they screw up each other's schedule. In my thought, it's that people are just, they say they care about somebody, but they don't act like they care. Like if you act like you care about somebody, you would put on the mask if you're in a bad mood, just so just so you don't ruin their day because your day sucks. And I don't think most people know how to do that because they have this assumption that, the guys like she has to love me for the real me or just be yourself and that crap. But if yourself is a grumpy asshole, then yeah, maybe be yourself wasn't a good idea in a relationship either. No different than when you were single. You follow where I'm going with this one? I know I'm like kind of coming up with it as I go here.
Well, I have an example here. I just have to look up the data because people have a thing with me that if I say something and it's not accurate, they'll call me out because I'm so used to being like, okay, I have this buddy of mine, right? He used to fight middleweight,
Mm-hmm.
and then he moved in with his girl, and then he went to light heavyweight.
Okay.
And his girl asked him like, "Hey, why are you doing light heavyweight now instead of doing the middleweight?" And he's like, "Because I'm fucking living with you." Because she was buying all this crap. Because his issue was like if he has candy at home, he'll eat it. If he has, it's really hard to cut if you have a cabinet full of candy in your house.
Yeah, I'm out of sight, out of mind, so I totally understand it.
So the way he cut was he just eliminate everything except lean beef, chicken, and vegetables from his house.
Yeah, makes it impossible to make a bad choice.
Yeah, and she kept buying shit and bringing it to his house, and he kept making that bad choice. And it wasn't that he couldn't cut weight; it was just like he couldn't cut enough to get into that weight class.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of made that, and she put on a few pounds too, and they kind of made this like covert, or well, I wouldn't call it a covert contract, but an agreement that okay, we're gonna snack more than we used to do when we were single, and we're both gonna put on a little bit of weight.
It's like a drug enabler.
And that was
Here's
kind
the
of a
thing,
deal
though.
between them.
Why wouldn't he
That
throw out the
comfort.
candy? Like he knows it's a bad choice. He knows what he has to do. What was stopping him from just grabbing the candy out of the cabinet, throwing it in the trash, throwing it into the dumpster? There's a
She'd
mind
bring
blow for you.
home more next day.
She would throw that out too.
But he didn't want to do that for some reason.
I think
I
we
think
can.
secretly he wanted. I think secretly he didn't want to fight in the middleweight class anymore. I think he wanted to fight closer to his quote unquote normal weight.
Oh, you figure? Because I have an alternate theory. I think he's
Oh
so
yeah.
worried about hurting a girl's feelings that he's willing to sabotage his boxing career instead. Like that conflict averse thing, which is weird because, I mean, being a boxer, you figure conflict would be his thing. But I think guys compartmentalize their conflict with men versus their conflict with women.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
And I know it creates conflict because I've been in the house here where my girl does something and I do something and I throw out food and she gets mad at me, very mad. So, like, I know it's a conflict. I know that much. Can't remember what it was. Why would I throw out the food? I don't even remember. It was probably just some like random thing and like harping on me, and I'm like, yeah, fine. I feel I
Yeah, but
sound
I
like
do it
such a
all the time.
child.
Well, you do it all the time because you're just going to run into those, especially if you're living with someone.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it is. There was a argument we're having, and I don't remember why, and I didn't want to have it. And for some reason, me having the food in my hand made the argument. So I put the food in the garbage, and now there's nothing to fight over. I remember that. So maybe it was conflict avoidance, but aggressive conflict avoidance. But most guys are afraid to do that. And can you imagine? Like, picture yourself from a girl's perspective. Everything stems from your feelings. We kind of all know the spiel there about female motivations. But what messages is the boyfriend or the husband giving you when they avoid conflict when it goes against their best interests? You're just signaling that that's a good idea and that the girl can keep doing it. There's no negative reinforcement to it. It's the same as like here, corporate environment. Your boss decides, you know, you did COVID for 6 months, the work from home thing worked out great. But then they decide now that COVID's over, you got to come back to the office. And people are always like, that's the worst. Like, why would you do that? That's bullshit. And they go, well, did anybody quit? You go, no. Well, then, like, what possible incentive does he have to change his behavior? Like, there's been zero negative consequences to it.
I think a lot of guys need to actually get better with that, and I think a lot of guys need to kind of determine. And I think that's why what's the Rolo spiel again?
Which one?
It's not the inner. It's not the inner self. It's the viewpoint thingy again.
The masculine point of origin, or the
your point of origin. Deciding that and doing enough work on it to know what your tastes and preferences are, so you know where do you have a hard boundary, where do you have a soft boundary, and where do you not care.
Harder than it sounds to get to.
Well, a lot of the hard boundaries are usually easy. Soft boundaries are harder, but I think that most of the time people end up fighting over things that that one of them don't give a shit about. Like right now, for instance, do you care what hand soap you use?
No.
Well,
God,
you might,
no.
But like most men won't give a shit what hand soap you use, or have a strong opinion on what pillows you need to have on the couch.
Yeah, but I'm probably like you in that I like consistency. So if something changes, then I have an issue with it. But it's more so the change as opposed to the hand soap.
So my view on that is just like you have to continually. Can you guys stop complaining about my mic?
You gonna pull a Donovan, start berating the chat? Look! Listen!
No, but it's just like every fucking time I go on here, it's like this mic isn't working. And then every time I try to fix it, and every volume is cranked to the absolute max now, so I'm not really sure what else I can do. Maybe it's something in the settings with... we'll see if there's something about the settings in... no, there's nothing with...
I actually tried to figure out how the hell do I actually get my volume up. Because right now it says that it's actually so loud that it's in the red zone.
Leafy, I love it. Yeah, you're clipping a little bit there at the top end. Whatever you did, 10% of that was perfect.
I got angry, dude. That's the biggest issue. I got pissed off at chat.
Oh, yeah. All right, I'm going to turn down the volume here. You're a bit loud for me now. Ah, son of a...
Okay, anyway, so what I was saying is just finding out those three things will fix things for you. For instance, like, if you, like in my case, for instance, I want a girl who's sporty enough that she'll won't be able to and want to go on the odd hike, she'll want to go out in nature, etc.
Yeah.
But I don't really want the type of girl who's going to drag me on like a 8-hour hike on the Appalachian Trail where we're sleeping in tents and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because I don't like to sleep places where there aren't showers.
I agree. Hot showers, none of that cold shower bullshit. Bazinga.
So that's just my preference. Like, other people I know have different preferences. Like, the friends I know who are very, like, nature people, they could never date someone who's like, yeah, I can't sleep in a tent for 8 days. And that's a hard boundary for them.
Right.
And I think a lot of the time, just getting into interactions with people, whether it's corporate, whether it's romantic, whatever, will kind of teach you what your own boundaries are, regardless of if you're looking for them or not. Just because, like, the experience you get from it, like, you may not know you like something, you won't know exactly what you like, but you'll learn what you don't like.
Yeah, it's much easier. I could tell stories about that. Like if I was doing project manager duties at my job because we didn't have a project manager at the time. And I found if I just asked people what they wanted or asked what their requirements were, they didn't know. But if I put something in front of them, they could tell me exactly what was wrong with it and what I could do to fix it. Solved a lot of problems, sped up the whole process. Is that agile or is that waterfall? I think that's agile.
Agile is the constant reiteration. Waterfall is just keep going until you have something.
Maybe it is waterfall then. I know, we'll see. After they made it like 8 or 9 different ones where extreme programming and extreme waterfall and agile, and I'm like, it was so simple when it was just 2 things, but I guess they had to make different types of belts for your Six Sigma, and so they had to keep inventing other terms.
Well, most of the time though, that's just it's kind of like I've been working on a kind of like a memoir of sorts of the corporate life, and one of the funnier things I've ever was when I started consulting, because my first day on the job, and I just came from the startup side of things, and the first thing like my mentor tells me is, okay, we have to get you like these 4 certifications. They're all absolute bullshit. You're never going to use them again. But people who hire consultants love to see them on your resume.
Yeah, they don't know any better.
And it's like the first week they drop like 50 grand on these certifications. And it's like, no one cares. You don't use them. The people you're going to be working with don't care if you have them. Your client doesn't really care either. But the one person who's contracting really cares that you have them. And it's kind of a similar thing with relationships in that you have some things you care about that are important to your ability to function in that role.
Right.
Then you have things that are fundamentally unimportant. Did Ryan die just now? Or is it just the camera?
Oh, yeah, it's the camera. Here, I'll fix that. Keep going.
Yeah, can chat, please whine about Ryan's fucking camera now.
Leave me out of this, your fight with the audience. These guys are switched on. Smartest audience in the sphere. Not one of them does semen retention. Nobody bought a Lamborghini. Nobody rented a Lamborghini. Nobody's making women great again. And nobody here has autism. What more could you ask for?
Well, you know what I'm thinking, but regardless, where was I going with that tangent? Well, there are things that are important for you to know in order to be able to do your thing. There are things that it's important for you to be perceived as having in order to function. And there are things that are going to be important for you that the other person or the client or whatever has.
Right.
And knowing those 3 will be the start of your boundaries. Like, a client calls me after 5 o'clock. He knows I'm charging him double. And even if the call takes 5 minutes, I'm billing him for a whole hour.
Only one. I know a lot of people that do, like, they bill the 4 hours. Like, any call is half a day's work. Although that might have been a public sector thing.
Yeah, I have no idea, but for me at least, it was that was kind of my boundary and my way of forcing them to respect my free time.
Mm-hmm. And it only works because you didn't need each individual client's business because you had enough that you had abundance, right? But if you were
to some extent, like some clients, you're always going to hurt if you lose them, but it's better to fire an annoying client. Same thing is, it's better to actually dump an annoying girlfriend early on instead of hoping that she'll become non-annoying, because they never get less annoying.
It's true. It's always more. But that's the whole point of plate theory, is for guys to build up enough data points that they can tell when they found their high quality woman. Like, how would you know? Oh, I don't ever date broken BPD. What do they call it? Polarized girls, like galvanized steel, I guess, for chicks. I don't know. But like, if you've only dated 2 girls, how the hell would you know where you are on that spectrum of good girl or bad girl? I know Royce said you need like, was it 8 to 12, and Rib said 30. I say it's 20. Because that's like, each girl is like a 5% data point. I know it doesn't map perfectly, but
I do kind of like Rib's like 30-30 rule, 30 lays and 30 years old before you settle down. I think that's a good kind of starting point.
Well, the only reason I don't like it is because it's just like he just picked the number out of his ass because linguistically it sounds good to say 30, 30, 30. It's like the 6, 6, and 6.
Oh yeah, I know he picked it, but I think it's a good rule of thumb, and you adjust from it. Like, some guys are going to hit those 30, or hit 20, or hit even 15, and they kind of know.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, some people need to do pickup for 10 years to get 8 lays.
Don't lean in on that one. Don't lean in on that joke. But yeah, like for 5%, 1 out of 20 is like a 5%. If some girls BPD, it's like 2.6 to 5%, somewhere around there. So the odds are pretty good. You're going to find one absolutely crazy girl that you don't like, one absolutely like infatuated girl that's completely annoying, and then you're going to have a sea of 5s and 6s, like middle of the road girls. Generally, you're going to find for the most part that girls for the most part are interchangeable. Then you find one that's got maybe 1 or 2 quirks that you really like. Like, I don't know, she likes to cook. But I mean, let's face it, it's a girl is cute, fits in that 4, 5, 6 level range, but then invests in you. That's really what I would consider the only differentiator between a plate and a potential girlfriend is the investment.
Yeah. And I also think like figuring out how your OCD matches up. Like, it's not a diagnosis in a sense, but everyone has things that they are kind of peculiar about.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a very set up system for how you organize your bookshelves,
Right.
and you meet a person who has the same thing, but you can't agree on a system. That's going to become a major kind of conflict zone.
Yeah.
Or let's say you like having every weekend free just to hang out and relax, and they want to, want a full social calendar.
Yeah,
Like,
that's gonna.
No, but like an old boss of mine was really funny that way, because they shared like their calendars with each other,
Okay.
and he had to kind of block out his time a month in advance. Otherwise, his wife would just fill it with shit.
Oh, poor bastard. It's like those guys that fill meetings in their calendar, so it's just that they can work quietly at their desk without being bothered.
No, I actually do
meeting.
that myself, just because people usually use shared calendars now, so they just open them up, and you don't have to share exactly what you're doing. They'll just see that you're busy.
Right.
So setting out those blocks is kind of like, in a lot of environments, that's the only way of not spending like 8-9 hours a day in meetings and having to do your actual work outside of office hours.
And that's an assertiveness thing. Like at the office, it's easy to do because that's the calendar, it's expected, it's a norm. Imagine doing that at home. Like just saying no if she wants to, I don't know, fill the day with going to the carnival or some nonsense like that, and all you want to do is sit there and unwind because your brain feels like fried eggs. Like guys don't have a calendar at their home. They just have to say no. But that's harder to do because it's not a structured environment. Like for example, the corporate world. There's a structured environment there. You kind of know who's above you on the chain of command, who's below you. There's general social norms. It's already been established. It's pretty structured. But at home, it's completely unstructured. So you kind of have to Calvin ball your way through the day. And a lot of guys have a huge problem with Calvin ball.
And that's also why I think guys get better at it with more experience, because once you've been in this situation, like I've probably been dumped. I've been rejected by more girls that I've slept with. And I've been dumped by more girls that I've actually been able to hold on to. So it's after those experiences, you kind of get so used to it that you don't really see those as being like the big disasters.
Yeah. Yeah, you've
And
seen
a lot of the time,
consequences.
I think a lot of people right now are raised in a way where they actually have to seek out discomfort. I think that's why things that actually make you uncomfortable, shit like CrossFit, like boot camps, all that stuff, I think that's rising in popularity because somehow we're wired to need like a degree of discomfort.
I know, but that's why I hate it too, because it's manufactured discomfort. It's that cold shower nonsense where, this shower feels uncomfortable, therefore I must be growing as a man, which we all know it's not the case. All that's happening is that your skin's cold and your blood vessels are dilating or contracting or whatever they do with it. Same thing with CrossFit. You're not actually getting any healthier. You're not getting any stronger. You're just doing ballistic movements and snapping your back some point on there. Like it's missing the point. Like the whole point of discomfort used to be that was how the growth happened. You were lifting heavy things, so you got better at lifting heavy things. You needed that because you wanted to throw a rock at a bison and eat meat. So like the discomfort was directly connected to the long-term benefit. But now we have a detachment of that to where the discomfort is just like a cathartic cocaine high and it has no benefit outside of that environment.
Yeah, it's like this dumbass animal rights girl who tweeted something like, "People who hunt should not be putting pain and suffering on all these innocent animals. They should go to the grocery store and buy their meat where no animals were harmed."
Oh, I hope that was satire, because that's too damn good.
No, it was like some legit chick tweeted it, but it's just this disconnect. I think a lot of people, when it gets uncomfortable in some things, they seek it out, and when it gets uncomfortable in others, they shy away from it, and it's usually wrong in both situations. Like, they shy away from discomfort, or potentially creating discomfort in their personal relationships when you actually need to do that on occasion.
Yeah.
And then they seek out conflict when they don't need to, like cold showers or, sperm retention or whatever the fuck that is.
That
sounds like a fancy word for
nobility. Semen retention. Jesus. Is that still a thing? Like, I saw a bunch of guys dunking on it lately, but like most of the guys that talk about this nonsense have blocked me. I've learned a very good system to laugh at them.
Let's just be honest. If you say to me that you're practicing semen retention, I'm going to assume you're swallowing cum. And trying not to puke it up. So it's like this amazing story I heard. Like, I not sure how I ended up in it, but I ended up on this like thread or something of people's like most embarrassing sexual moments. And one girl was giving her guy a blowjob.
Right.
And and he just came in her mouth. She had a mouthful of cum, and she was supposed to go out and spit it. Then as she stands up, she gets one of those auto sneezes where you just sneeze, you can't help it, and she just sneezed his cum all over his own face.
And you can't react on that one too. That's like if you do anything and she's gonna be like, "What, you don't like it? Well, why am I supposed to?" So you're like, no, you got to take that one on the chin. Whatever, doing the Lord's work, sir. I salute you. Handle it like a champ.
Well, the thing is, you just get comfortable with discomfort or awkwardness, because people have a different tolerance level for it, and I think that's kind of the problem. People who are very comfortable with it tend to not have those issues, but people who are very uncomfortable with awkwardness or any form of, boundary setting, they're going to struggle in any situation where the other person isn't also like that. I think that's why a lot of guys are like, I want a really perfect submissive woman, because at that point you don't really have to set any boundaries.
Yeah, and they want her to come like that straight out of the packaging. They don't forget. It's like, girls aren't born. Like, good girls, high quality girls aren't born. They're made. They're made because they invest in you, because they think you're their best option in some subconscious area, or they just really love you. And so not only do they do things that make you happy, but it actually makes them happy to do that stuff. So everything kind of aligns, and that as a natural process, it makes sense. If we were cavemen without language, of course that's how we would sort things out. The people who are most invested, like that pair bonding thing, the people that tended to do that more would probably make more cave babies, and then those cave babies would be around to make more cave babies. But again, it's like every instinct we have now in this modern world of abundance, it's just kind of skewed and it doesn't quite work. And so we're at that weird transitory phase where we have to strategically apply it. Discomfort's a perfect example. You have to strategically apply discomfort. Otherwise, you're taking cold showers after a CrossFit class thinking that you're all that is man. Meanwhile, your wife is sleeping with Tyrone,
Poor man, I have to say though, Tyrone and Kevin get around a lot.
Tyrone, Kevin, and Marty in sales. Yeah, Kevin, I need to come up with like a better. Well, there's also Marty in sales. Oh, guys, stop talking about Carl's microphone, because every time you do that, the quality, like, it blows out my eardrums every time he does the testing. I'm just saying, guys, come on, I've already got tinnitus. I don't need to have hearing damage as well.
But I don't necessarily think it's just, I don't even think it's about work, Marty, and laziness. I just think it comes down to the fact that people they want to be comfortable most of the time, and especially in at home, they want to be the most comfortable.
Yeah. And that used to be a good thing, because being comfortable was hard, so it inspired you to do things to make yourself comfortable. Now comfort's like the default setting.
Well, just look at it this way, like, when you first start dating a girl, her bra and panties always match. They're always sexy. Then once once she moves in with you, she starts to bring out the flannel pajamas and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly she's not doing her makeup and her hair is up in a bun all the time.
Oh,
Like I told you the story before about the... Like I had a buddy of mine who was dating a girl who used to do like... She was like a pinup model or something for, street racing or something.
Right.
And at one point, like, she did a photo cover for one of the magazines, and that magazine was laying on the table in her living room when he was over. And she was walking around there in, like, her comfy clothes with no makeup on, like, probably hadn't showered for a day or so. And he kind of took the magazine off the table, and it was like, where's that girl? I want to be dating her.
You know what? It's perfect. He should say that. Put it out in the open. It's like, yeah, I like this girl that puts in effort. I don't want flannel goddess. But at least he's letting his wishes be known. So if she is invested on it, she'll obviously change her behavior to meet his standards, or she won't. But then that kind of, you know where you stand, right?
It kind of goes back to one of like the earlier conversations we had about like what's harder, being like a bachelor or being married and living with your girl. And it's, if you're living with someone, you're always going to have like a degree of no effort and a degree of, okay, that person is just sick now.
Right.
Like you're going to have those moments, but it's just a proportion of them. I'd say if she's a plate, you should expect her to be, 95 to 100 every time you see her.
Right.
If let's say you're down to like dating one chick, then she should probably be, let's say 70 to 80% or above effort all the time.
Right.
If you've been together for 15, 20 years, you can't really expect her to be much over 60. Because if you see couples who have been together for a long time, they can still put in effort for each other. But at that point, if you've been together for 50 years, you've invested enough that you can... At that point, both of you kind of want slack. That's why you see those old couples on the beach in Florida.
Yeah.
Just wearing those, like, who farted t-shirts or I'm with stupid and stuff, and just walking around half day drinking.
Yeah, but I don't like those couples. I see the couples that are up here, like in Victoria. Victoria, BC is where a lot of, like, aging, wealthy people are. And you watch them getting older, and they're still putting in effort. But it's not effort for the other person. It's like self-respect effort. They still dress nice. They still stay in shape. They're in their 60s and 70s, still jogging on the weekends. I think it do set the standard as a guy in the relationship, like what is and isn't acceptable behavior. And then the girl that wants to be with you will meet it. And obviously after 50 years, my point isn't so much that you guys will start to slack. It's that you just start to normalize that amount of effort you put into the relationship. And that becomes the de facto baseline. So in that sense, you're right. Yeah, it's been 50 years. I don't need to put an extra effort to you people, but you've already been putting an extra effort as your default state for so long. You just consider that to be the normal thing, which makes sense because when girls break up with a guy, you know how they can never date worse than that? Like, what's that, Tommy Lauren? Now, whatever guy she dates, that $50,000 engagement ring from the super high quality model is like the bare minimum she'll put up with. Because to her, that was just the standard that was set for her. Which sucks for her now because she's not going to get it, but whatever. At least she's got that good job at Fox News or whatever she's working at now. I wish I'd have paid more attention to that.
Kind of the way I'm thinking about it is just like, if you think about a statistical distribution, the effort is always highest in the beginning of a relationship, and then it drops off. But the amount it drops off over a period of time, that's the important variable to look at.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Drops off, but towards the baseline. I'm talking about increasing the baseline, which is just, that's what people can do with their standards. Yeah, you'll slide your baseline, but raise the floor, exactly.
So, I don't know, kind of dead air time.
I was hoping you were going to finish that thought. I get in that habit of cutting you off. I think I do these streams solo too much, so I'm just used to filling the air with whatever mouth noises I can make on the topic. And I don't get any visual indicators from you as to when you're ready to speak, which is like, it's not frustrating. I love chatting with you, but it's the one thing I've had to get used to chatting with you on here is that I have to just make spaces and then you'll either fill them and then catch on if you're not. Like I can't go by any old systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think you also have to calculate in a certain degree of change in any kind of... Because you have to expect a relationship to be static. It's, the old thing, like, women marry men expecting them to change, men marry women expecting them never to change.
Yep. Everybody's disappointed.
I think there's a lot of truth to it, but I think even more so, you have to account for the fact that people will change over time. Like, people develop new interests, and it's part of growing as a person.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big things that happens when people get married really, really young, is that they still don't have like a framework for themselves. Like, when you get to be between 30 and 40, you start to have enough preferences developed that you become more resistant to change, and you become you're more of the person you're going to be until you die. But there will be new things, you'll throw some things out, and the important thing is to focus that those aren't the things that are very important to you, and the other person too. Like, if it's important for you that your girl cooks.
Right.
If your girl stopped cooking and just started ordering in takeout every night, that would be an important thing for you.
But that's a slow boil thing too, right? Like at first, it's like, whatever, we have slack months, whatever. It'd be 6 months, maybe a year until I notice it's something that's permanent. So it always sneaks up on you. I think that's the point I'm making there. It's one of those things that kind of terrifies me. Like, unless you go completely autistic with your preferences, you'll never see it coming. But then once you do see it coming, how do you react and how far? But that's a cost sunk fallacy thing. And that's kind of where being a little bit cold and detached comes into play.
Yeah, and when someone changes, you also have to make a decision. Is this an okay change in your opinion?
Yeah.
Because there are some things, like, I believe very much in, like, each person has the autonomy to make their own choices within, like, a limited bound. Like, if you're in, like, you and your girl live together. Like, neither of you could decide that you're going to move to the Canary Islands without consulting the other person.
Yeah, which I could do, but then again, she also doesn't have to stick around for it.
No, you could do it, but that's the consequence, right?
Right.
So some things you just have to run by the other person, or it limits your... Like, if you're in a relationship, like a monogamous one, you can't fuck other chicks, she can't fuck other dudes. If one person is like, yeah, I kind of want to fuck other people, and the other person can say, okay, you can do that, but then I'm breaking up with you. And that's a fair deal.
Yeah. But then there's always that subconscious one, too, where some girls, they're kind of over the sex thing. Hormones are out of whack. Maybe they never liked you and they got the kid now, and that's fine. Where the understanding is, go do it, but I don't want it coming back to embarrass me in front of my friends. And that's the hard part, because it's not as overt as you're saying, where it's like an arrangement saying, okay, no cheating. And I got it, fine. And I think that's where a lot of guys really need to get better with subtext. Like we're saying, just understanding that no means no unless it means yes. Obviously, no. If you don't get any of this stuff, then you're not going to know this stuff. And you're going to end up in this horrible dead bedroom when it really was the girl was just completely disinterested in you other than as an economic unit. And you can go get your stuff, go get your strange on outside of the marriage as much as you want. Just don't bring any stuff back home and make sure the kids make it to school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like the arrangement that, okay, I'm not going to fuck you. You can fuck other girls, but I don't want you to bang, any of my friends or any of the girls at work or anyone who's I'm going to run into in public.
Yeah, and like Rolo
crazy chicks that's going to have a meltdown on our lawn.
Exactly, and they just want guys who get it. And that's for the most part, because girls don't want to articulate that, because then it's the plausible deniability. If you say that outright, then you're on the hook for whatever happens on account of that. And girls don't want to be on the hook for that, but they don't mind the arrangement. And that's kind of, again, it's on the guy to kind of lead the relationship, even if it's one of those dysfunctional ones like that.
So ultimately, I think everything boils down to, it was kind of a fun topic we had picked, but I think it just comes down to, again, like boundaries. And I kind of want to go back to like what I said with hard, soft, and no.
Yeah.
Because kind of like a hard boundary, that's your expectations of the other. Those are things you just don't do.
Yeah, don't stab me.
So cheating would be the prime example of a hard boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if your girl catches another dick, then you just get rid of her.
Right.
Unless you want to keep her around, demote her to plate, and then start plating other girls.
Well, that's still getting rid of her. That's just on your time scale. Like, that's something Cad used to say. It was absolutely brilliant. His girl cheated on him. He didn't know for sure, but he kind of knew. Like, she was lying about meeting with an ex and stuff like that, and there was a rank of time. So you can kind of infer that it did happen, or at least she tried to make it happen. And everybody was getting mad at him. It's like, I don't get it. She cheated on you, so why are you still with her? He's like, yeah, I'm leaving her, but I'm not doing it on her timeline, which I thought was amazing. Like, how many guys are willing to be dark triad or Machiavellian enough to, like, strategically decide when you're going to leave so you can do it on the best footing possible, as opposed to just emotionally losing your thing. Oh, she got a dick. I'm out of here. I'm going to burn this all to the ground. I found there was a great value in that, putting your ego aside to strategically burn the relationship down on your own terms.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you have the soft boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to do because like a lot of the time it's just going to be the ego, but I think that's kind of like an elephant in the room in the soyosphere that you kind of vacillate between the extreme slow burn Machiavellian never be affected by anything crew,
yeah,
and the emotional ghetto masculinity. I'm going to shoot this guy for scuffing my Jeezy's masculinity.
Yeah, emotions, pure emotions, and then you go. They tend to be the guys that always talk about being the more rational gender too. It's like, is it though?
And I just think you need to be aware when you're doing either. When are your emotions in control, and when are you actually thinking? And then when soft boundaries are kind of the most interesting one, is because the hard ones are easy.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, they are things that would piss you off so fucking much if someone did it, that it's just automatic, almost, reflex.
Right.
The soft boundaries are harder, because the soft boundaries are things that are important to you, but they're not burn the boats type things.
Yeah.
Like, one of mine, for instance, I have my kitchen organized according to the French method.
Yeah, everything that you use most often is within arm's reach.
Yeah, I was going to explain that to the audience too, but it's just like a way of organizing the kitchen so it makes sense. It doesn't make sense if you're the kind of person who thinks that, well, we should put similar things in the same place. Because the French method is more like, okay, you're going to use a spatula and your chef's knife more often than, let's say, a cheese grater. Well, unless you're American, that cheese grater is probably industrial size with an engine attached to it that you have to fucking kickstart. But you're going to use that more often than you're going to need to get a whisk, for instance, or you're going to need whatever.
Yeah, so they're always the closest.
That makes
to
sense
center.
to me. Yeah, they're the closest to your workspace, and it's just an easy way of doing it. And I also have kind of a mise en place setup, where like I have the most common spices and oils just set up on the counter. So you have your olive oil, you have your canola oil, and don't start with the whole oils things are killing you. That was another meme. Salt, pepper, maybe chili flakes, things that you use constantly.
Mm-hmm. The thing I love about that is you can organically kind of organize it too.
Yeah, it kind of comes naturally to you because, like, if you take the salt shaker out 18 fucking times while you're cooking a meal, then I should probably have that here.
Yeah, or you just put it within arm's reach because you're going to grab it again in a second anyway. And yeah, it sort of naturally organizes itself to a way that's perfect for you, which is why every time somebody else walks into another person's kitchen, they're always very disoriented because people don't know how their organization works or what they cook like. And if somebody doesn't know how to cook, they just assume all the plates go together.
And, like, let's compare that to my mom's kitchen, because my mom is kind of OCD-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So she has to have, like, the same thing. So everything she defines as a kitchen utensil is thrown in one big drawer. And for me, it's horrible to cook that way. For her, it makes sense. But I couldn't live with someone who insisted on our kitchen being organized like that if I'm doing most of the cooking.
Right.
So that's kind of a soft boundary where you're going to have to find some kind of middle ground. In that case, where, okay, we'll do something that's similar. So ideally, you want the person that you're with to have soft boundaries and hard boundaries in complementary or synergistic ways. So let's say okay, let's say your girl is OCD about cleaning up in the kitchen, and you're OCD about cooking. That's a synergy, because you mess it up when you cook, she cleans it up afterwards. That's a synergy.
Right.
If she insists on having the kitchen organized in the messy way, and you insist on the French way, and she messes up your organization constantly, and you mess up hers, that's going to be a conflict area. And that's going to have to be resolved somehow.
That's funny because that's how our kitchen is. We both kind of have like a French style of it, but we both have slightly different. Like there's edge cases. For the most part, everything's where we agree it should be, but there's always like a couple things, like where the jars go versus where like the whisk goes versus the knives. Not deal breakers, but definitely soft boundaries. And I find our best answer for it has been just occasionally have like a stupid fight over nothing and then let it go. And then just realize it's a knife, we can grab it. But that's that thing. It turns it from like a hard boundary, how I like things done, to more of a soft boundary. It's like, this is how I like things done, but it's not the kind of thing that I'm going to basically throw you off the balcony over. And this is a decision we made, and we both cook well enough that it's... But that's the thing. Like, she cooks amazing food. I cook good food. And the benefit of that is worth the conflict and the difference in organization, I guess is how to explain it. It's not even a negotiation, though, really. It's just kind of, it works out that way. But that's how you find out your boundaries, by having them tested, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the time, examples of those kind of boundaries are going to be things like her putting on weight is a typical example.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of guys will put up with her. Let's say she puts on 5 to 10 pounds. A lot of guys are going to put up with that, and they're going to kind of accept that because it's those comfort pounds that tend to come on everyone once you go from being single, running around and drinking, hard seltzer and vodka. What do they call those, skinny girls?
Oh, the White Claws?
No, like there's a drink. It's like vodka with just like non-flavored seltzer. I've heard a bunch of names from. I've heard them called anorexics. I've heard them called skinny girls.
Oh, the name. I've always just called them vodka sodas, but I know exactly what you're saying.
So once you go from that to maybe you're eating at home more, but you're cooking good food together, maybe you're sharing a bottle of wine instead of, drinking pure grain alcohol, you're going to get those pounds. And like they limit like 5 to 10 pounds acceptable to most guys, especially if she puts it on in the tits or in the ass. Ideally both.
Yeah, good girls.
50 to 100 pounds, it's different. So it's a hard boundary maybe if she puts on 100 pounds, but it's a soft boundary when she puts on 5. So how do you start enforcing that? And what I've found with soft boundaries, it's better to do let's call it covert enforcement.
Okay.
Where you don't actually tell her, hey, you're putting on weight. If you have to stop putting on weight, or we have to stop putting on. You just subtly start changing things, and you start cooking healthier. You stop having, drinks with alcohol. Of course, you have alcohol in drinks, but you stop having like sugary mixers. You go from the nice locally sourced sugared tonic water to zero tonic water, and you start just making those small substitutions.
Mm-hmm.
In order to kind of bring the weight back down.
So it's similar to your boxing buddy, how he would just not buy candy. Like you set your... UEM McGill talks about this too. You set up your process. So that way it's impossible to make bad decisions. Or you front load all your decisions.
Occasionally you will make... Yeah, and occasionally you will make the bad decision. You're both coming home from work late, both are exhausted, and you're like, fuck it, we're ordering pizza. That's going to happen. But the goal is to not make that happen 80% of the time. Because 80-20 is really, like, if you stick with it 80% of the time, you will get most of the results anyway. Because, of course, like, to do the weight loss example, you could go, like, full-on calorie counting, weighing everything out, doing portion sizes, or you can just be like, okay, let's go, and instead of having... pasta in the salad, we'll just use lettuce, and we'll throw something else in there instead of the pasta, or instead of using mayo, we'll just do a vinaigrette.
or the spaghetti squash. Yeah, there's tons of alternative choices you can make on this stuff, or maybe just stop eating Italian. But there's always a solution.
Or like if your girl, or if your girl tends to dress a little bit too slutty for your liking. This usually happens to guys who try to wife up hoes, and then they're surprised that she doesn't buy a sundress immediately and stop wearing her hoe clothes.
Oh, the Kanye West syndrome.
Yeah, like, and at that point, you're going to have to do some kind of enforcement, which you can do it just telling her, hey, listen, we're in a relationship now. I don't want your cooch hanging out from your shorts when we go out.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much to ask. Is it, dear?
Or you could do it like more, you could try and do it more subtly by taking her places where it would be natural to be dressed more conservatively.
But here, how do you not do that in a covert contract, though? Because you're doing that with the expressed intent of her not dressing like a hoe.
Yeah, well, I think a covert contract is me doing something to get you to do something.
Right.
Behavioral modification, well, let's call it covert behavioral modification, is the situation where you take someone from one set of constraints into another set of constraints with the express intent of modifying their behavior.
So if I had to compare to that here, let's be devil's advocate here. If I had to say the word, I don't know, gaslighting, and attach it to that, you probably wouldn't agree with that sentiment. But just for the sake of argument, let's explain it why. And by let's, I mean I need you to, because I can't think of one right now. This concept's new to me.
Yeah, sorry, I just... let's see, you were doing devil's advocate, and then I kind of zoned out because I was reading something.
Yeah, that sounds like I could picture Debbie from HR calling that gaslighting. And I obviously don't think it's gaslighting because there's no malicious intent behind it.
I don't think so either, because gaslighting, if you're going with like the exact definition, is when you're trying to make someone doubt their own perception.
Right.
Like the whole expression comes from a guy who was going to try and make his wife go nuts. So he would slowly like dim the lights in the house over time and tell her that, no, the lights are the same way they've always been. Now, in this case, it's more of a... Let's say you work in a conservative industry, and you need your girl to be able to be with you on, like, business trips or, like, corporate functions.
Right.
Then she's going to look to you to kind of define, okay, how am I expected to look for this? How am I expected to behave from this? Because, like, no girl, if she cares, will want to embarrass you at any form of social function, because that reflects poorly on her as well. Because girls tend to adapt to their environment very well and very quickly. And by doing it that way, you're just putting her in a new social environment where she adapts to that environment instead of the environment to which she was previously adapted. Now, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife, but you can take a girl who's well-behaved but somewhat unrefined and raise her levels of sophistication somewhat.
Oh, so yeah, you're salting your coffee. Like, you can't make bad coffee good, but you can make good coffee great. Same reference, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. If you guys don't know,
So
if you have
it's the
really
same
bad
thing
bitter
with-
coffee, add a little pinch of salt to it, and it's amazing.
Didn't know that. Thanks for the tip. I never have bad coffee, though.
Well, aren't you fancy? You only bang 9s and 10s.
Well, speaking of coffee, yeah. But it's kind of like a similar thing. It's like girls who date older men tend to develop that, let's say, sophistication quicker than girls of their same age. Just because older men tend to be, to some extent, more... I'm not going to say refined, that sounds wrong, but the kind of older men that can date younger women tend to be a more refined person. There's an economic aspect to it, too.
They're better at it.
Like, you're not dropping...
good behavior.
Yeah, and you're also not dropping $50 on a bottle of wine if you're a student. You're drinking the swill that's on the bottom shelf at the store that usually has some kind of animal on it.
All right, here's something in the chat here I wouldn't mind dealing with on this. You guys are having a talk like, where did you can't just sign up your girl for Weight Watchers, and I don't know that Ryan would do it that way. Here's my thought on that. Weight Watchers is like a marriage counselor. Why, if I'm wanting to establish like being the dominant figure or the leadership in the relationship, why would I defer that responsibility to some third party for a fee? Like, why would I pay somebody to be the authority? That's actively working against you.
Yeah, and also you have to keep in mind the way girls work. If you sign her up for Weight Watchers, even if you spin that positively, she's going to be like, okay, he's calling me fat.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is this guy to call me fat? Yeah, you may as well. And because she's going to interpret that as you calling her fat either way. So it's a much smarter move is to like just start going to the gym. And they always have like those classes for girls like Zumba or whatever, and girls love taking those. Mm-hmm. But just be like, hey, I was at the gym and I saw this great class. Do you want to do that together? Because you can actually make things into couples activities. And that way she won't think about the fact that you're trying to make her lose weight. She'll think about the fact that, oh, he wants to include me in something he enjoys doing, and girls always like that.
And, usually. Wouldn't be the worst case scenario either if there was like a bunch of hot chicks that work out at that gym and she's like, well, maybe I should just go to keep an eye on them just in case. And then while you're there, might as well lift a weight. Is that the worst thing in the world? I don't think so.
No, so it's just, that's all it's about, really. It's not about manipulating. Well, it's kind of manipulating people, but it's manipulating with good intent.
Yeah, I love this manipulation conversation because everybody gets it so wrong, and it separates guys who truly get it from guys who don't. Guys will say manipulation the same way they talk about assholes. It's automatically a pejorative, hands down. Manipulation is always wrong. Never do it. I'm like, really? Never? Like, everything is manipulation. And for some reason, it's only wrong if I do it or if the guy does it. Like a baby cries. That's manipulation. They want it to be tended for, and they know if they cry, you'll come care for it. A dog yelps because they want to eat. He'll sit by my ear whining because he knows if he does that enough, I'll go to feed him. That's manipulation. A girl gaslighting you because it's just a friend of hers, nothing happened. That's manipulation. And nobody talks about that stuff other than maybe lip service. It's like, oh, that's bad. But for some reason, you have a guy's like, hey, you know what? My girl's going to be happier if she's in shape like me and we spend more time together at the gym or running on the weekends. And all of a sudden now you're an evil monster. I'm just like, dudes, all you're doing is you're doing another TradCon thing, but you're, hiding it behind a whole big layer of bullshit. Just keep your morals, keep your ethics. I want to win, and I want my girl to win with me.
I just had sorry, I don't mean to cut you off here, but some guy in chat just had a great move because he said, like, join a country club. The other women there will make her level up fast. And he's exactly right. But I think that's why people enjoy watching things like The Real Housewives. Mm-hmm. Because they're trashy hoes who, despite having money, never leveled up.
Right.
So you get to see very out-of-character behavior. Because you don't expect people who have that kind of wealth and influence to be completely lacking in sophistication or refinement. It's nouveau riche, more or less.
Yeah, because they're
For
saying...
those that don't get that term, just to explain that term, there was a thing back in, I think it's originally French, but it was back when it used to be that only the nobility had money.
Right.
So then suddenly tradesmen and merchants and so on could start to make a lot of money, and they became rich, but they didn't come with that kind of same upbringing and era of sophistication. So they
none of the same values.
Yeah, so they would kind of behave badly. Like, you would never, like, people who are born into a ton of old money are usually very pleasant people. The assholes are the Karens that just... Yeah, it's usually the Karens that ended up with the $50 million who are obnoxious twats. And it's the same thing with a lot of girls. You have to kind of mold them into what you want them to be. Part of that is leading by example. Part of that is introducing them to new experiences. Part of that is just investing time in them in order to make them level up. Because you can't expect a girl to, like, know what you want her to become without somehow giving her an indication.
Oh, but that's the high quality girls. They just have to know this stuff right out of the packaging.
Yeah, I know. And
As soon as you break the steel, trad wipe.
I think that's the funniest thing about the good girl thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's similar to like deep throating. If your girl knows how to do it, someone taught her how to do it. And you should thank that dude. But know that someone invested enough time and effort and knowledge into making her able to do that. Because they don't come like that out of the box.
No.
Like a woman doesn't learn to take a dick like Sasha Grey without some practice.
Sasha Grey didn't learn how to take it like Sasha Grey without practice.
No, it's like the 10,000 hours only for dick.
I don't know why that makes me laugh so much. I think it's that morning my coffee finally kicked in. Balzacs, by the way.
Oh, well,
Absolutely
blue blood
funny
is a
from an
matter of
8-year-old
education.
Sorry, what's that?
That's exactly no. It was in reference to my comment. Some guy said like, what Carl is saying is that blue blood is a matter of education, and yeah, to some extent it is.
Yeah, well,
of course, it could still go wrong, and you could become Prince Harry despite the best education and sophistication in the world. But most of the time, that level of refinement is something we have to learn because we're not born as refined creatures.
Well, yeah. Well, people forget that the Queen's English or the King's English, that British accent, that's a manufactured accent. That doesn't exist organically because of the part of town you live in. They send the aristocracy to boarding schools, and they learn the accent there. They literally learn how to speak proper. Speak proper. That's even how the Newfies and like the East Coasters, they refer to it when somebody has like a very bland, like American broadcast accent. They say speaking proper. So everybody kind of knows this, and you have to teach it. That's what boarding schools are for. That's why parents go to the nice schools. That's why Harvard is paying, you have to pay Harvard like $100,000 just to be able to go there and get the same education that you get anywhere else. It's strictly about that kind of like social grooming. Because Harvard people will trust Harvard people because they know what Harvard people are like and they have the same experiences. Like you always like your own more than you like the other, right?
Yeah, I think that's why you get these hiring practices too. I don't think it's necessarily conscious or malicious.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just like you trust people who've gone to the same school as you've gone to. You trust people. Let's say you meet a guy at a party and you found out, yeah, he grew up 2 hours from where you grew up.
Yeah.
And you're on the other side of the world. You're automatically going to be like his best buddy.
Exactly. Unless you got some issues about it.
Yeah, but I usually joke about the fact that the further away the enemy is, or the others are, the bigger your group becomes. Because, like, let's say you're a New Yorker, and you meet some guy from Jersey.
Right.
That's not a good thing. They're going to kind of argue with each other, and even within New York in the boroughs, there are kind of conflicts between them.
Oh yeah, the Queens, Bronx, they all hate Staten Island.
Yeah, and if someone says something bad about New York, then suddenly all these people are going to band together and fight the other person. But they're still going to fight, the West Coasters or the corn-fed Midwesterners. But then someone says, fuck America, and then suddenly all of them band together against that enemy. And suddenly when we have an alien ship up on the outside Earth here, then everyone's going to band together like we're humans.
Yeah, global citizen. Well, that's kind of how humankind has evolved and civilized itself over the eons. It used to be just that tribe of like your immediate kids and whatever you were breeding with. And then it kind of became a tribe because 150 people together could hunt more deer than just 2. And then after that, it got to like a city where you had agriculture. So people within a city state became an us versus them unit. And then the church kind of built religion. So every Catholic was their own group, and then it became the nation state, or the nation states. And now I don't know if it's going to get there, but that global citizen thing, it's kind of the only place we can really go now, other than ethnicity. But
I don't know.
Obviously,
I think we're going to work on regionalization first.
Oh, you think we're going to balkanize a bit
place
more?
That's going to no regionalization. What I mean by that is you'll have like let's say you'll have North America, like Canada and the US, it's already kind of 51st statey.
Yeah. Ugh.
Then something's going to happen like in South America where they're probably going to create 2 groups, one based on Portuguese, one on Spanish.
Right.
Then you're going to see something in Africa, but I think Africa is just going to break apart again before it gathers back up. Then you have Europe, which I think is going to struggle the most with it, just because you have such a long history of
tribalism. Each other.
And the nation states.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind, like the culture is vastly different from, let's say, England to, well, England and Poland are kind of similar. It's just like a difference in implementation.
Yeah,
But
and
let's
England's
say
always been
the
different than continental Europe.
yeah, let's say the in continental Europe, you have like the Germanics and the Romance languages.
The Slavs count as Europe, or are they
Uh,
all Asia?
they're kind of somewhere in between.
Hmm.
So I think you're going to have those regions, and then after that, you might have a global thing. But the global thing is not going to happen until we're kind of get everyone leveled out.
Which I don't think that's going to
Because
happen.
I just don't think you're going to have people in the U.S. and Europe and the industrialized nations take like a comfort cut in order to make life better so that Indians don't have to shit on the street anymore.
Did you see their anonymous thing? Like they have guys dressing up in anonymous masks in India, and the whole point is they're trying to fight the fight against defecation in the streets. It's like the funniest thing ever. It's like the same way as watching a Bollywood movie that's trying to rip off the Matrix, but it just looks so cheap and poorly done. It just reminds me of like anonymous protests, but instead of like Occupy Wall Street and the 1%, it's like don't shit in the streets. It makes me laugh. They even have a TED talk on it. By the way, guys, don't shit on the streets. That's the lesson. Oh, it's funny. I think I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched it, but I think he even had like an anonymous mask while he was giving the speech talking about this. And a whole bunch of practical things he could do.
Well, to get back on topic a little bit here, what I was trying to get at is, how the guys who are like, yeah, I'm going to go to a good conservative country, I'm going to find myself a wife to be, and then I'm going to bring her back to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh yeah.
And then they're surprised when their girl is suddenly turned into a pillar of salt, so to speak.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. It's very biblical.
And that's just but then that works the other way too, to some extent. If you take a girl who's raised with quote-unquote Western values, and you introduce her into more conservative circles, either culturally or whatever, then she will adapt to those circles. Yeah. And then she'll slowly get rid of her hoe friends.
Women more so than guys.
They're embarrassing.
Yeah, suddenly they're embarrassed, right?
You just have to think that way. Like, you can't expect her to become a decent girlfriend if she's still hanging around all her hoe friends, she's still going clubbing, and you're not putting in any effort to change her.
Mm-hmm. Even if we want to let's be generous and say inspire her to change or incentivize her to change, because you can't tell a woman what to do, blah, blah. I don't want to offend Megan in the chat here. No offense, baby. But yeah, just you set yourself up for success. And you basically describe the same thing as the boxer and the relationship from early on. If you don't want to eat candy, don't put candy in the house. If you don't want your girl to act the same hoe that you wifed up, don't put her in a hoe environment. Put her in some place where the incentive to act better is stronger. And girls are social creatures, much more so than guys. So if you put them around a bunch of people that act right, then it's more than likely she'll act right to fit in. Which is kind of how feminism got it. They just made it cool to hate on men like feminists do or whatever. And that's why a lot of women, they're not actually feminists. They just kind of like being part of the group. And that's why the cure to feminism is just a really good dicking. Because then she's got a new hypergamous best option.
And I think if you want to see this in examples, you go into the worst hoe places in the world and find a significantly sized ethnic population that are not necessarily insular, but very, very close knit.
Are we talking like the Amish here, or are we talking like Thailand?
No, you can go into, let's say, Chinatown.
Right.
If there's a large Asian population, or you can go into someplace with a high degree of, let's say, Islamic population, something like that. And you'll notice that they have their own little enclave where a lot of the people in it, including the girls, are not behaving in the way the majority population is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see where you're going.
And that could be two ways, though, because I know for a fact that a lot of not a lot, but you still have hoes in the Muslim population, for example. They're just very, very good at hiding the fact that they're hoes.
Yeah. I love that, by the way. One of the guys in my community is one of those. He gives me all the lowdown on the Muslim hoes.
And what it comes down to there is just like you have a higher probability than average of finding someone who comes with a little bit more act right out of the box than if you go with the native population.
Right.
Because that's really all it's about. It's about finding a person who's significantly act rightish combined with the qualities you want in order for you to have something to work with.
Right. Then your side of the thing is that, well, what incentive does she have to act right? And so that's on you to kind of be her best option. Which is fine. I wouldn't want it any other way. Like, what other incentive do people have traditionally to improve themselves other than, to get a cave wife and make cave babies? A lot of guys say, do it for yourself, don't do it for girls. What's that?
And that was kind of what Jordan Peterson was getting at, too, back when he was doing the enforced monogamy thing he got lambasted for.
Oh, yeah.
All he was really saying is we didn't used to force women to get married and that type of stuff. Well, we did that too, but what used to be is like the majority culture had reasonably conservative values. They saw the value of, marriage, faithfulness. There was an incentive by the majority population to act right and to remain within wedlock. If you got divorced, you would be ostracized.
Yeah.
If you cheated, you would be ostracized and humiliated publicly. If you were a hoe, you wouldn't be able to find a good quality husband, and you'd have to settle for the 60-year-old alcoholic.
Yeah, everybody would set up for failure.
And
you didn't put candy in the house, and then people wouldn't eat candy, essentially.
But now you've kind of removed all the negative incentives for a lot of our population with the following results that people are no longer acting right. And how can you expect them to act right when you've taken away every natural incentive for them to act right?
I think
what you have to do is reintroduce those incentives.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I kind of made a reference to this when I made that. I don't know if you saw the tweet where I said, yeah, the liberalism and independent thing is great, but you got to admit it's not the best for like long-term thinking a lot of the times. I think people had this idea of the inherent nobility and civilization of people, not thinking that we're just the same meat monkeys that we always were. And so we're now having that rubber hitting the road where, okay, so you leave people to their own independent devices and it turns out we're all just selfish hedonists. A lot of people are kind of getting mad about that.
COVID is the best example for that.
Which is?
COVID. It's the best example ever.
All right, I'm listening. Walk me through where you're going with this.
Because, well, let's say we don't have like accurate numbers.
Right.
But let's say theoretically COVID will kill 1% of the population of Earth.
Right.
It's not a very high mortality rate, but 6 billion, 1%, still quite a lot of people.
Right.
But you could fix it by everyone just staying in their house and playing PlayStation for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't put any rules. You just say, hey, everyone gets 2 weeks off. Here's $1,000. Chill for 2 weeks. Nobody leave their house.
Yeah. What kind of compliance?
You would still have people leaving their house. Like people would never. I've laughed so much about this because what you see is when the government tells you stay inside, then suddenly people want to go outside. But when the government is saying, hey, go outside and exercise, everyone's like, fuck you, I'm staying at home. And I don't think you can rely on the majority of the population to make good choices without having those structures and incentives in place. And the only thing we have left now, more or less, is negative reinforcement in form of you go to jail or you get fined if you break the law. We don't have any of like the soft... Well, we have them, but they're not that tightly enforced, and people exist in enclaves.
Oh, and that's why you can't... That's the problem, is you have to... They either exist or they don't. You can't half-ass it. We've kind of half-assed it now. Add to that like, it also... You require the authority. Like, people saying that the 1% death rate, do this, you'll stay alive. That requires a certain level of trust from people that you're giving that authority to. So those people aren't really doing their bounds because they've been caught lying before, or the perception of impropriety, like they're not trustworthy. And so you add that there as a disincentive. If authority here, like if the CDC or whichever World Health Organization, if they were above reproach, if they treated their respectability as sacrosanct, ruthlessly cutting out anybody who even told the smallest lie about it, I bet you it would go a lot further than, oh, now you got... I can't even think of all like the conspiracies off the top of my head, but the thing where, well, remember when they lied about this or they lied about that? Now, like, which one do you trust? Which one do you not? And I think it's not so much that, I mean, it's part of it is people are selfish and they just do what they want without incentives. But at the same time, if you're not stepping up as that leader and willing to be like above human nature, then it's really hard to use that same authority then to affect change in other people, other than, like you said, negative reinforcement.
And I also think that leaving people to make choices of their own volition and having the freedom and having to bear the consequences, that will naturally create winners, losers, and mediocres.
Yeah.
Because you'll have the people who naturally are more inclined to make good choices given our current social paradigm, people who are, let's say, human 2.0, to just take a word for it. The people who are actually better adapted to a society where you have a knowledge economy.
Yeah.
You have a very good, if you're able to delay gratification, you'll do very well. If you have the ability to kind of cut through bullshit, you'll do better.
Yeah, the faster you can
learn.
If
you have the ability, and you learn quickly, the faster you can adapt, and the better you are at change, the better you'll do. But if you're one of those guys, and I think that's why we get the tradcons, by the way, because they're men pining for a time that they are better adapted to, or think they are better adapted to.
Yeah, I'd argue think they're better adapted to, because I don't think they actually are, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, yeah, but I think it's more, I think that's where nostalgia comes from, when it's nostalgia for a different time. Because I know some conservative Christians, too, who, like, oh, I just wish we could go back to, like, the 1890s, when, you know, the church was strong, we had the perfect balance between church and state, and, you know, Christian morals and values were still in vogue, and I'm like, yeah, that's the time when people died from polio, right?
I was going to say, yeah, you always had 6 brothers, 4 of which died at 5. People always forget about the negative side of things, though. Oh, I missed arranged marriages. Really? The one where they married you to a fat girl and you had to put up with it? Like, yeah. None of this stuff sounds great if you start looking at the whole picture.
And for me, it just comes down to, you have to kind of figure out, like we've been talking about for an hour and a half, you have to figure out your preferences, soft boundaries, hard boundaries, what stuff don't you care about, and sometimes the stuff you don't care about could be used effectively as leverage to get something that you
do care about.
Yeah, like, one of the things, like, I've noticed with my girl right now is that for her, it's extremely important for her to be listened to. Because she kind of grew up and stuff with people not listening to what she had to say, or with the decisions that she made. So I make sure that I listen to her on things I don't give a shit about.
Oh yeah, because for you it's a very easy.
Like, you know, I told you about, like, well, like, if she wants me to, like, do something with the like, turn a table, or, you know, buy some piece of furniture, or change the hand soap, or whatever, then I'll just go along with it, because, to be honest, I don't care.
Right. A small
and then
concession
if she starts an argument, like, yeah, and if she then wants something that's bigger, that's one of my soft or hard boundaries, and she pulls out the "you never listen to me," then you can kind of, then you can go back to, well, you know, here is the laundry list of things. This is just something that's important to me.
Oh, dude, I don't even bother with that anymore. The memory of a goldfish thing. I always just poke fun at that, like, complete lack of memory, because I know it. She doesn't feel like it right now. I know that's Ryan's rule. Anything she says that she feels means right now. Anything she says she won't do, it means with you. So when she's like, you never listen to me, like, I get that occasionally where it's like, you never take me out to dinner. Meanwhile, we went out to dinner like 2 days ago. And I just laugh.
Would it be ironic? Would it be ironic if some chick in chat just said something that all women want to be listened to, and I willfully ignored her?
Oh, you're such a dick. But yeah, they all do. But that's the thing. That's what you want. And then what do you want? Like you said, you're doing the good boyfriend thing, doing the listening, whatever. But that kind of is, it's not a covert contract, but that's rewarding good behavior. If she's good to you and everywhere else in life, of course. This non-existent boundary of yours to give somebody attention unconditionally, sure, I'll do that. But it's not unconditional. It's because, yeah, you've been good to me in every way. Why wouldn't I treat you well? And it's not even a quid pro quo or a tit for tat. It's just generally when you're in a better mood because other people have been treating you well, you tend to have more of yourself to give. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, find a guy who got freshly laid the night before. He's probably pleasant as hell the next morning. And vice versa.
Yeah, we usually joke about that with, we had a couple of guys at my old job And we could always tell when they'd gotten laid because it was the only like 3 days a year they weren't ornery as fuck and annoying and pissed off and yelling at people. Oh, Sam must have gotten laid last night. He hasn't yelled at the cafeteria girl yet.
Nice. But I like it too because it's not like my latest video. I don't know if you've watched it. I call it the smartest dogs are easiest to train, where a lot of guys brag about their high IQ, but all that means is they're predictable. And as long as somebody can make patterns fit in their head, they'll do whatever you want. Part of this is just kind of relying on your biology. Oh, sorry, what's that?
Well, the thing is, like, I've been following, like, the Unsolved Mysteries thing, right?
Yeah.
And when I've been watching a lot of those, when a lot of theories pop up after an unsolved mystery, and usually they're like, it's kind of obvious what happened. You're just missing, like, either who did it or why did the person do it. But you can usually figure out what happened just by being, like, ruthless Occam's razor. And just don't go where, like, the guy had to be triply unlucky, like, he went out, he got drunk, and he ran into organ harvesters who took his kidneys. Then he was found by someone who runs an underground prostitution ring, who's currently pimping him out in the Middle East. Like, you don't have to go... It's like the Ancient Aliens thing. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people there are fairly high IQ people, but they're too high IQ because they see a pattern and it fits, but it's still not the right pattern. It's similar to the God of the Gaps logic, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I am. Oh, dude, my dog Hitchens. Of course I know it.
So, it's, for me, that it's the same thing with everything. It's just people with high IQs tend to often think themselves into submission. Mm-hmm. They're just too smart.
It's like an ego flex too, though, right? It's like, I'm so smart, I can find patterns where none existed.
Yeah, look at like the guy in A Beautiful Mind, John Forbes Nash.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be either. He was so good at spotting...
Oh, sorry, he was so good at spotting patterns. No, he was so good at spotting patterns that he could spot patterns in everything. The problem was, a lot of the patterns were there but didn't mean anything.
Just, random, the p-value
when his mind cracked, so when his mind cracked, he started seeing, it's the KGB communicating to me through, these patterns.
Mm-hmm. But that's why I don't think it has to happen. So you and I are obviously, we're decently high IQ. We're smarter than the average bear. I don't want to go bragging or whatever. But you kind of understand it's not an identity, it's just a tool. And so you can turn it off and you can turn it on. Sometimes you're like, you just literally Occam's razor. The smartest thing you can do is dumb this down as best as possible. And I think that's kind of like an applied intelligence as opposed to a raw, unfiltered, or unrefined intelligence. If you kind of follow where I'm going.
I think that's why a lot of guys kind of struggle sometimes with Rollo and why he's had to write the same article from 19 different angles.
Mm-hmm.
Because they kind of understand what he's saying from an abstract level, but there's no application aspect of it. And without that application aspect, it's just too theoretical for a lot of people because they can't figure out the path from theory to application themselves.
Right.
They need someone to actually do that for them. And usually 150 IQ comes up with the theory, and 125 IQ comes up with the implementation, and then 100 IQ implements.
And the 80 IQ digs the ditch so they can have the water not overflow the implementation. Actually, I shouldn't make fun of ditch diggers. They're good people. So
that's one of those things you have to just get down to. I think that's what I try to do all the time, is just get this down to a level where people can actually understand what the fuck we're talking about. That's why I keep dropping examples in here, even if some of them are kind of dodgy. It's just going to exemplify the different things, like the behavioral modification thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the global sexual marketplace. Girls will always have access to information about what kind of value men are available in the greater world.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they are automatically in a position to exploit that opportunity. It's one of those, the oldest thing in the manosphere is like 20% of the guys are getting like 80% of the women.
Oh,
but you're kind of neglecting the fact that the logistics aren't in place for 80% of those women to be able to get that 20% of men. Most of them have to settle at some level,
Right.
and most of them are aware of it.
Well, yeah, that's where I talk about the
And that-
matrices of hierarchies. It's not just a single worldwide hierarchy, and 80% of the girls are going after that 20%. It's in the bar that night is a single hierarchy, or your office, the people sleeping together at the office, or the college. There are all these little micro ones, and yeah, there's an overarching one there. But you're right. Every little local area creates its own like. Ooh, what's the WoW term for it when you guys do the raids and it makes an instance? It's like their own WoW
yeah.
instance.
Yeah, it's accurate in a sense because you can leave it. Yeah, it's actually a very good analogy that every hierarchy becomes an instance of itself with a group of participants within it, and when a participant leaves or a new one enters, that slightly alters the hierarchy.
Yeah.
But it's not like if, let's say, you're like the top guy at the bar, and you've been flirting with like a cute girl the entire evening, and she knows like, okay, this guy's going to try and take me home. She's not going to instantly go cold and ditch you if a higher value guy goes in. Because she has to evaluate her probability of, okay, how going home with Ryan is slightly worse than going home with, Kevin from sales. But Kevin has 4 other girls going after him right now, and all of them are hotter than me. So I'm better off, going in with Ryan.
Yeah.
Because he's already hooked.
Well, I was going to say pre-selection too. A lot of the times you get a dude there and then a better dude's coming there. She doesn't really know that and it takes too much cognitive effort to do it. But if all of a sudden all the girls at the bar stop paying attention to Ryan and they start paying attention to Carl, that tends to draw her attention that way. And where I think girls are more likely to trade up.
Yeah, or at least attempt to. But it's also going to be like a judgment of how she stacks compared to the other girls in that given context. Because it's kind of hilarious that girls are actually better. Like, I'm pretty good at spotting hot chicks. I've had a lot of practice.
Yeah, I'm proud of you.
Your average your average run-of-the-mill girl is much better at spotting hot girls than I am.
Yeah, because that's the competition.
Go out, yeah, they're constantly scoping the competition and noticing that all the time. So I think they just do that very well. And I think the reason pre-selection plays into it is just because then she doesn't have to do any of the heavy lifting. Because if she sees 10 other girls going after a dude, let's say he's already been judged, evaluated, and he has a stamp of approval.
Exactly. And it's just how we were genetically geared towards that way because brains took up way too much energy. And so we spend all that time thinking about who was better and who was worse. You wouldn't have any energy left to make cave babies. So
Did Chesty just make 90 Day Fiance reference in chat?
What? Of course he did. He's all into that stuff. Pareto blocked by logistics. If only my unicorn didn't live in Estonia. Oh, that's funny. So I don't think guys are getting the IQ 2000 joke. It's actually a board game. I guess it's a Canadian board game. That's why nobody knows what it is. There you go.
I did get the over 9,000 one.
I should hope
that's a
so.
Super Saiyan reference.
Never actually watched a Dragon Ball Z. Never seen one. I just know the reference. I think that's the separation between early and later millennials is whether you watch Dragon Ball Z or not.
I think the biggest issue we have in this space, though, is like the gap between theory, application, and let's call it reality.
That is the most generous way I've heard you describe that ever. The reality gap.
A lot of the things. Well, yeah, but there is a reality gap here because if you're one of the guys like I'm only sleeping with 9s and 10s, okay, they're 9s and 10s in your subjective evaluation. You had 2 bottles of vodka that night. You could have slept with one of those latex sex dolls, and you would have been like, "Yeah, that girl was a 9. She didn't move much, but goddamn, she was a good lay."
But that's the point. It's not about the girl. When guys say they only sleep with 9s and 10s, girls don't care about that. A girl will get jealous if a 5 starts giving you attention. They're doing that as like competition with other dudes. That's their way of saying, I sleep with hotter girls than you, so sign up to my course. Doesn't matter if she's a 9 or 10 or not. It's a flex. It's like every flex. Dude, I could kick your ass. Most of the time, the guy probably couldn't, because if he could kick your ass, he'd be very quiet about it because he doesn't want to hurt his knuckles on your face. But they always say this because it's like a posturing thing. Same thing there.
Yeah, they want you to back down.
Yeah. I only sleep with 9s and 10s. Well, I sleep with 6s. What do you got now? Where do you take that? Fist fight? Book sales off? See who sells the better book? Why feminism is wrong versus gendernomics?
Oh, but I think that's where you get the reality gap, though, because a lot of guys tend to get themselves into this rut where, let's say they're a 5 or a 6 now. Mm-hmm. They would rather work on themselves because it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Instead of just going out there and, okay, maybe you have to sleep with a couple of 4s, but it's better for you to get laid and spend some time away from the soyosphere. Yeah, I do think that I've talked with you about that before, that we have so much content being put out now that it's essentially possible to be like WWE. Yeah, no, but you can WWE it. You can watch something every day, all day, instead of actually putting in work. And you get kind of into this echo chamber where everyone uses the same terminology, everyone thinks similarly. It's mostly dudes, except for like the couple of girls we keep around as examples.
You know what I love about that?
You get into a very insular...
Uh-huh.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing I love about that, so with the Patreon community now, a lot of the guys, they get really mad at me. They're like, I can't watch this. I can't, because of you and Carl, I can't watch the stuff in the sphere that I used to, because it just drives me nuts now. And I'm like, awesome. removing the user base. That's like the biggest goal of any like, I would love if that was like the case. We were the cast iron pan. Yeah, that would be sphere. You buy us once and you're done for life. You know?
That would be the optimal one, but I think the reality gap just comes from... It's the same thing that's happened with American politics, really. Mm-hmm. Like, you have two sides that have completely different views of reality. It's like they don't even think the world is the same.
I agree. The motivations are always different.
It's kind of... And it's the same thing within the space. It's like, you have the guys who are like, well, if you leave your girl alone for 5 minutes, she's going to be on another dick, man.
Yeah. And on the other side of things, it's no, trad girls, they're in it for life. Bad boys for life, you know what I mean? But they can't agree on anything, and they're all liars. That's not
reality.
And that's the thing. Even when that comes to haunt you, because I know Purple Pill debate, perfect example there. There was a bunch of girls that would argue hell over high water that none of this stuff we talk about as women is like that, because I used to be a slut, and now I'm with my husband, and we're great, and all your stuff is wrong. Take that. 3 years later, they all ended up getting divorced, doing exactly what like it would suggest when you try to turn the home into a housewife, exactly how it plays out. And then everybody just kind of collectively forgets that. And they're still making the same arguments for like 6-7 years, even though their own personal lives have been the perfect example of exactly what we're talking about. It's just, well, like the reality doesn't even meet the ego of it. Do you know what I mean? Well, like they just don't connect A to B at all, even if it's right in their face. And like you said, it's a reality.
Yeah, but that reminds me of... Well, it reminds me of someone who used to be in this space. I think the name ran with Proctor Schmabe.
Keep going, I'm listening.
But it's just like, well, it's people's lives are the complete different from the picture they're selling online or the picture they have in their head. And I think the biggest thing we have to do as human beings is to align our view of the world with actual reality. And yes, I'm one of those assholes who think there's an objective reality. And the more you align your actions, behaviors, and thoughts with reality, the better your results are going to be. Sure, Ryan's girl may cheat on him, but if she does that, there are going to be a bunch of girls out there, and Ryan, he's actually looking decent apart from the shirts, that he could probably get a girl who's like 5-10 years younger than his current girl.
She's already 8 years younger than me too, so it's not like I don't have experience doing that. But that's the thing. Yeah, that's the reality of the situation here. And I've seen enough field reports of other guys doing it to know it's possible. It's just like a military course. It may seem brutally hard, but you know what? I've seen 20 guys pass through this the last course. Like, I'll be fine. Just don't quit. It's that certain reinforcement confidence that comes with the replication. And that's the perfect example of all these field reports. You got Dude, you got stabbed by an ex-wife. You managed to find yourself a nice hot one, much better, with much. Does she have less accurate or more accurate knife skills? Yeah, better or worse? How do you want to frame that one? But you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason you can't attach reality to your own actions at this point, unless you're willfully ignoring
like,
it.
I'm a lot. Like, the Stabby X was, I think she was like 5'8" or 5'9".
So she had the reach.
The new one is, yeah, the new one is a lot shorter, so I have a big reach advantage there. So I think that's the best one.
You just got to rope a dope. Go up against the ropes, let her punch herself out. Then when she goes for the stab, you can just quickly swat it away. There's his new course, Carl's new course. How not to get stabbed by a bitch. $4.97. Available in Gumroad.
Like, I don't remember who came up with the quote, but I heard it a lot of years ago. It's like, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's a good one.
Because luck is just a cause of it's just probability. Like, you could luck out, and let's say you take $100,000 and you figure out, okay, I'm going to invest this in something,
right?
And you luck out, and suddenly you're a millionaire. There's no guarantee that you can do it again because you were just lucky. Or you could have been very good at that specific thing, but then you invest in something you're not good at. Like, if you watch Kitchen Nightmares,
right?
Look at how many people were successful in a given career, and they were like, well, everyone enjoys coming to my house and eating for free, so I'm going to open a restaurant and charge people for my food. Turns out no one's willing to pay for it, but everyone will take free food. Successful in one area, not successful in another one, because their idea of their reality was aligned in their old job, but it's not when it comes to the restaurant. So if you look at what Gordon does, the first 30 minutes of every goddamn episode, it's just like beat into them out. This is not reality. You are being delusional.
Yeah. He actually says specifically, you're being delusional at least 5 times an episode.
And it's the same thing with the Soyosphere. They're creating this narrative where all girls are absolute hoes with notch counts in the 3,000s. And no one's going to support you. If you get married, you're getting divorced, raped. Every girl will get accidentally pregnant if your dick is even close to her. If you're a married guy, just looking at the girl at the cash register is going to make her jump over the cash register and suck your dick. So you better not do that. And they're creating this horrible world just so they can be like, oh, by the way, I have a course for this. It's $4.99.
Yeah, I could stave off this anxiety that I just gave you. Not
it's the same thing. If you look at Trump, but look at politics too. It's the same thing. It's like you're creating this world where, like, oh yeah, we have MS-13 or whatever they're called, marching across the border carrying tons of cocaine and assault rifles. They're ready to take over your cities, but I know how to secure the border. So they're manufacturing, they're taking a small problem and they're blowing it out of proportion and making everything about that. And then they sell you the solution to it. And that's exactly what's been going on in the Soyosphere for so long too. And you have to kind of exaggerate more and more as we go on. Because in the beginning it was like, yeah, most girls are more sexually experienced than men. Like, you have the old rule, like, if a guy tells you his notch count is 100, you divide by 3. If a girl tells you her notch count is 3, you multiply by 3.
Yeah.
That used to be like the old rule of thumb. Then that became, no, every girl now has had 150 dicks by the time she turns 14. Like the Mexicans, like, instead of having, like, quinceañeras and, like, the Lutherans have their confirmations or whatever, instead of that now, girls are being gangbanged by 18 black dudes the second they turn 16.
Well, what was
creating like an...
Yeah, it's an inflated bubble. It's delicious tacos. He said it. Remember that? His quote, what was it? I hate how the Sphere's advice went from, building yourself up to be better to if your 5-year plan being make yourself a millionaire. Like, completely unrealistic expectations. And what you got me thinking of on this, though, it's what makes somebody a good liar? Because lying is hard. Rollo kind of got me on this train of thought when we had that big argument. Like, does Roosh really believe in this nonsense, or is he just grifting? I was convinced that they were grifting, and Rollo's kind of convinced me after showing me the Pinnacle of Man video and the other guys that, no, they really believe the crap that they're spewing. And then I kind of looked into it from an Evo Psych perspective. The best liars are able to lie to themselves first, like the Jerry Seinfeld thing. And so I think for a lot of these guys, that's the problem with the reality bubble you said. It's not that I know if I build this insecurity saying your girl's going to jump on 8 dicks as soon as you turn around and don't, do something perfect, I think they honestly have to believe it. And the ones that are better at convincing themselves of the lie are better able to start shilling courses, which makes it a little scarier for me because it's not even a case of being grifted or snake oil, because at least that change the incentives and then everybody will change because they're all self-aware. But you have the blind leading the blind, completely self-unaware guys that are lying to themselves, lying to other people. And so you just have this big missing reality bubble, which is specifically what the sphere was designed to counteract, Like, do you remember that? It was just really, we've been lied to our whole lives. So let's observe what we can for ourselves. And it's gone down the exact same path. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, but I actually think you're right on that, though. I think I think you have some people who are just straight grifters.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a lot of people who are getting high on their own supply.
Yeah. What was the wrestling
Like,
term
they
used
lie
for
to
that?
themselves.
Buying
Yeah,
their
they're
mark?
buying their own... they're marking out on themselves.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan was famous for that, by the way.
He actually called everybody brother, but they weren't his real brother. They weren't his brothers at all.
I think that's it. Well, like, I legit think Rouge believes in his own bullshit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I didn't want to, but
Just because, like, you wouldn't... Like, would you really train wreck your life to that extent just to make money online?
Anthony did. Didn't even make money.
Well,
They'll do it for nothing.
Well, to be honest, though, but it's kind of hard to tell, though, because, like you said, I mean, the best liars can lie to themselves first, and then they're not actually cheating people. They're just... I think they genuinely believe they're doing the right thing, and that they're actually out to help, but they're just not aware of what they're really doing.
Yeah, and then again, that puts the onus on the individual. I guess we'll end it here. We've been going 2 hours, and Rule Zero starting in about half an hour, but it's really, the onus is on you to, what do you say, vet your gurus better. Make sure the guy you're talking to has a better grasp of reality than you.
But also, like, going back to the example here, if you've been doing and been associated with the sphere for 10 years, and you have 8 lays in those 10 years, then it's obviously not working for you, bud. I mean, at that point, you're either listening to the wrong people, you're doing something wrong in implementation, there's something just really, really off with you, like you have, like, 3rd-degree burns all over your fucking face. There's something genuinely wrong if you're getting results that poor after that long of a time investment. And I think that's the ultimate kind of weightstone to it, like Benjamin Graham used to say it about stocks.
Yeah.
That in the short term, the market is a popularity contest, but in the long term, it's a scale. Because
makes
stocks
sense,
can
because the
be
people that lose
overhyped.
money exit the market, and the guys who made good decisions eventually stick around.
Well, that's not actually what he meant.
Oh, okay.
Take the Theranos scandal. You know the Elizabeth Holmes thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was a billionaire at one point, but it was all smoke. But it was popular. Journalists loved it. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is going to be like the new Google," and they have a female startup, so they went for it. Okay, I'm going to have to bail now, Ryan. I'll see you later, man.
Yeah, we'll see you later. I guess I'll do the ending thing here, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Rule Zero, it's on John's channel, half an hour. They're talking about the vice president stuff, so I don't really have anything to offer for American politics. I'm going to go on Twitch, do my thing. I'll probably just do some Factorio or something. You're welcome. If you're bored over there, come check it out over there. But honestly, go watch Rule Zero. It's a better use of your time. Like I said, thanks for tuning in. You guys know the thing. Fuck Files is there. The channel's at 10,000. I got the second channel, Digital Ryan, where I put the Twitch stuff on there. And I guess I'll spend like a minute or two hanging out and chat with you guys because I missed a bunch of good stuff you were saying right at the end here. Never slept with a guy on the first date, but you slept with me. No, we haven't been dating yet. Yeah. See, a lot of it is just really about lying to themselves. A lot of people don't understand that. They assume girls are these Machiavellian, super evil warlords. And I think it gives too much credit, not because Whammon is bad, but just people. Don't give people very much credit. Chances are, if they pulled the wool over your eyes, it's not that they're good liars. It's that they're bad liars. And so they have to convince themselves. Because then all the signals you get about lies, they you're actually very easy when you can tell when a person's not being congruent and he's lying. So the best evolutionary advantage you can have is if you're gullible and you can convince yourself of a lie, then everything about your body language, your tonality speaks honesty. And so it throws off people's radar. And so they literally have to have their own critical thinking to decide whether you're lying or not, because you're not going to give them any indication because you don't even know. That's why every female life coach is like a 43-year-old single woman who's never had a boyfriend telling you about how to get a girl, or every guy who's never got laid swears he's got the best pickup routine for you, or any guy who doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together, a pot to piss in, or a window to throw it out of has the best way to have you make money, or some guy who had to buy his subs for a social media platform is selling you like how to build your Twitter following. It's almost like a self pep talk using you as the reinforcement mechanism. And it's annoying, but it's not going away. So if this stuff isn't going away, the best you can hope for is you become much better at spotting bullshit, because you always have to apply it to reality. Reality is the one thing that'll never change. It'll never lie to you because it can't afford to, and it doesn't really care about you. Whether you win or lose is indifferent. So yeah, try stuff out. Does it work? Does it get you laid? Does it not? If somebody's course does help you, that's great. If it doesn't, then that's great too. Don't be too embarrassed to call something out like I tried this and it didn't work. That's really the only way that people will know things, is by swapping notes. So on that note, I've been rambling my own too much. Thank you, by the way, Raffle. That one's awesome. Tom, again, the best acquired taste in the manosphere. Thank you very much for the kind words on that one. Alpha Slots pretty much got it nailed. So I'll be on Twitch. Oh, I guess I'll put the channel here if you guys are curious. Twitch.tv/Rian Stone RP. I think that's the one. I think that's how it's done. That should be the one. So come on in, check it out. We'll just do some low level chit chat. If there's topics you kind of want to expand on, or just to shoot the shit, we'll talk about all kinds of topics. So I'll catch you guys later. And let's see if I got this stupid branding thing working. I'm trying to work on intro videos. All right, I'll see you guys later.